Well, Dave, the Taylor Hall verdict is in. We'll go over it exactly what's going down and how we feel about it. There's some other injury updates that we have for you, and also Leafs Jets tonight. We'll preview that game. Does Matthews go for 50? I don't know. We'll chat about it and maybe play a little bit of cosign, no sign as well. Jam packed show today. Let's get right to it. You're listening to Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother from TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. And Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. You can now catch us on video on YouTube. That's Locked On Leafs. And Dave, we woke up to a few new followers this morning, some new subscribers, and I bet you they found out that if you subscribe, you can win yourself one of these bad boys once we hit 500 subs. And people said, yep, subscribe. And we also had a bunch of people ask, like, hey, if we're from out of country, can we still be eligible for the gift? Yeah, we had someone from Australia ask. Hell yeah, I'll send this thing to Australia. You want to go to England? Heck yeah, I'll send this thing to England if you end up winning. If you win, if you're one of the lucky out of our 500 subs to win the prize, I will send it wherever you are located. And just a reminder, seal's not broken. It could be autographed. You see right there? Find a golden superstar stick and you could win. It's not seal, not broken. You still could win. So make sure that you do sub and subscribe to us on YouTube. All right, Dave, let's get right into it. It's going to be a bit of a busy show today. We got some injury updates on a couple of players. The Taylor Hall verdict was in, and we got Leafs Jets tonight, so we got to preview that as well. So a busy show. Let's not waste any more time. Why don't we start off with probably what both of us want to sit here and scream and yell about, and that's the fact that Taylor Hall avoids suspension, only gets a $5,000 fine for a sucker punch. His brutal Bush League sucker punch on Ilya Lyubushkin last night. What were your initial thoughts when you saw that kind of cross through your Twitter timeline this morning?
Mike, we were clearly wrong. It was a glove tap from Taylor Hall. Not egregious at all.
Little scratch. He said, hey, you got a little whisker there. Let's just cut it off for you. Is that what happened?
You know what? I should have taken it out. My brother had a pair of his old hockey gloves here. I decided to take a little test run to see how hard I could punch something with hockey gloves on. I can say for sure you can hit something pretty hard with hockey gloves on, whether hockey gloves or bare fist. Still hurts, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, absolutely. It definitely still hurts. We're both. Neither of us were too happy with that. In the past, we have seen many suspensions actually for a sucker punch. So, I didn't really realize until today somebody pointed out to me, or I'd forgotten the fact that Dylan Larkin actually was handed a one-game suspension earlier this year for a sucker punch on Matthew Joseph. So, there was precedence that was set already this season by George Peros and the Department of Player Safety that a sucker punch is worthy of a one-game suspension. I don't quite understand why this one was also not worthy of at least a game, at least one game, if that's the precedent that you already set earlier in the year. It's the inconsistency with the Department of Player Safety that really, really bothers me.
And we're not talking about this as for a Leafs bias. I think people need to realize that this is just about a lack of consistency from the Department of Player Safety. It's meant to keep players safe. We understand the hockey's a violent game. Injuries are going to happen. But when it's blatant and player...
a non-hockey play. This was a non-hockey play.
Yeah. This
right?
is a player reacting because he got hit. Look, it was a bad hit. Even when I went and looked at it, I said, you know what? That could have been a bad hit.
Yeah,
It
we said that
didn't.
last night.
We totally agreed on that part. The part that does not should not be overlooked is the fact that, as you said, this is a non-hockey play. Ilya Buchkin was gonna go back into the play. He couldn't because Taylor Hall decides I'm gonna punch this guy from behind. Like I just don't understand how the NHL thought that was worth less than what Dylan Larkin did.
Yeah, I don't quite understand it either. Just looking at the precedents from the last few seasons as well. Michael Haley got a 1-game suspension a couple of years back. He sucker punched Cal Yarncroc. Nick Ritchie, when he was with Anaheim, had a 2-game suspension for suckering Michael Rosefall. Max Domi, probably more famously in the preseason when he busted open Aaron Ekblad with an unsuspecting quick jab. You know, that patented Domi jab, probably got it from his pops. That one was a little egregious. That was a 5-gamer. But then Taylor Hall gets a $5,000 fine, which, I mean, he's got $5,000 in loose change hanging around his car. Like, let's be honest. How is that going to deter him next time when he gets hit in a way that he didn't appreciate? How is that going to deter him from letting loose and doing that again? He said
No.
$5,000, well worth it. That's well worth the sleep at night. The fact that I know I got the guy back for him hitting me. At least like a $5,000 fine is nothing. But if you give him a game or two, now you're looking at some significant pay, and also that's on the books. And then that's actually saying something. That is how you rid these types of plays out of the game, right? By suspending them and deterring the players from doing these acts. This doesn't deter anyone from anything. If it's actually a joke, it's a slap in the face to the NHL, slap in the face to Ilya Lyubushkin that it was a $5,000 fine. I understand that's the maximum allowed, but the
If they're gonna
CBA,
find him.
right? If they're gonna find, that's all they could do, and I get that. Like if they could, I'm sure they probably would have given him more, but that's the maximum allowed, which is just stupid in itself. But anyways, but like that wasn't the way to settle it. I mean, a 1-game suspension, I think, probably would have been suffice. I have 2 games, I think, would have been. I wouldn't have, argued about that either. But at least one game. And I don't know if you knew this. I found this out. I don't believe I mentioned this last night. I saw this after we had recorded the podcast. But did you see this rule that apparently is in the NHL rulebook? The one that the officials and referees are supposed to abide by each and every game. You aware of this said book that exists here called the rule book?
I
Yeah.
tweeted from said rule book today, actually.
Was it rule 46.15?
It was. I'm pulling it up right now.
Well, I'll tell you what this rule says. A match penalty shall be assessed to a player who punches an unsuspecting opponent and causes an injury. You're going to tell me that wasn't a sucker punch to an unsuspecting opponent that caused an injury? Taylor Hall not only should have been given, he only got given 2 minutes for roughing, should have been a match penalty, and also should have been a suspension on top of that. The officials botched this call. They botched it because if they did get a match penalty, then it would have got probably a more of a deeper look from the Department of Player Safety, I would think too.
That's exactly where I was going with that, because we mentioned the Dylan Larkin suspension. The reason why he also got a game was because he got a match penalty for what he did.
There you go.
So really, this was, it's funny because Brad Marchand was giving the refs a hard time, and I guarantee the refs are just like, you know what, we kind of gave Taylor Hall a bit of a break there on his play. I just think when you see the different opinions on it wasn't that egregious, like a lot of people were saying, I guarantee there were some refs who are just like, you know what, it didn't look that bad. But it's not how it looks. It's the situation that it created, which was Ilya Lyubushkin had to leave the game.
Right.
Because
like if it didn't hurt that bad, he probably wouldn't have left. Like there's one thing if he would have turtled in the way that was it Joe Haggerty said yesterday. Okay, if that was a punch and he turtled, kind of looked like a soccer player or something like that, and then went back to the bench and was all smiles. Okay, then I could see there's a bit of an argument there that maybe that was a bit of a dive. But the guy left the game. Like they had to play shorthanded. That's not worth the 2-minute penalty. It's not worth the power play to play a man short, 2 man short, because Hall was already out of the game by then too. So don't sit there and tell me, like, sure, it may not have been the hardest contact, but doesn't take a lot of contact when you're talking about the head, right? You hit something in the right spot, it rattled. Like, you never know what could happen when you're talking about the head. And that's really the NHL and the Department of Player Safety are supposed to care about these things and the safety of the players. You should always take into account what's going on up here, and no matter how much force, I guess, was in an unsuspecting punch like that. It's not a play that needs to be in the game. It's not a hockey play. It was retaliatory, and he was unsuspecting, and it caused an injury. I'm sorry, that should be an automatic 1-game suspension at the very least, and a $5K fine. That's just a failure by the NHL and the Department of Player Safety. Failure.
And even to put a bit of a bow on this, the AAHF, any contact to the head, automatic. Not even if it's accidental or not. Nope, we're not tolerating that.
Yeah.
The one thing the IIHF gets right that the NHL does not. Like, I'm sorry, but you need to deter these players from thinking that any sort of contact with the head is allowed or is acceptable. That's what the NHL is pretty much saying, that this was an acceptable play in that they look, the fine means that they don't agree with it, but the fact that they didn't go with a harsher punishment means, you know what, it wasn't that bad that it warranted a heavier suspension. And if I'm in a concussion lawsuit right now with the NHL,
Hmm.
I'm kind of saying thank you for a little more bullet in that chamber for our defense.
Well, this this is a terrible transition into concussions and concussion lawsuits. But there was news that came down today about Andre Kasha, who we all know has a very long history with concussions, currently dealing with some injuries right now. He was placed on LTIR today by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Not a good sign. Not a good sign. Sheldon Keefe spoke a couple days ago and basically was like, "Yeah, we're not sure where he's at right now." And I think that's kind of telling as to what's going on with him, where maybe he feels good one day and then some lingering issues the next. We don't really know. We haven't had a chance to speak with Kashi. He hasn't had a chance to talk with media, but obviously getting placed on LTIR, not a good sign given his history.
No, it's not. And like these are just it sucks for someone like Andre Kasha because he plays the game so hard, and who knows how this is gonna. He had to deal with this when he was with Boston and with Anaheim. Like these are the sort of things that people always say. He was such a good player, but injuries caught up to him. It's like, well, head injuries are just so different because they can be so unpredictable, and in a lot of cases you try to avoid having them in the first place. And I was really
Well,
liking Andre Kasha's game.
all cases you try to avoid them, not some
Yeah,
cases, all
I'm
cases.
sorry, all cases. Thank you for that. But no, like Andre Kasha, this is a pivotal player for the Leafs. He was going to be like that second line player with John Tavares. This isn't a fourth line player. Like, all players deserve the equal amount of respect, but for the Leafs, like putting a guy like Kasha on LTIR when you already got so many key guys out, that's a tough one.
Yeah, so there was no practice today, but I would imagine that Sheldon Keefe will give an update on that and speak on that tomorrow. And we'll bring
Mhm.
whatever he has to say to you and get you more up to date on that situation. All we know now is that he was placed on LTIR. And because there was no practice today as well, it was a travel day for the Maple Leafs. There's also no word on Justin Hall or Ilya Lyubushkin, who left the game against the Bruins. However, there were some emergency call-ups made today. Philip Kral and Mac Hollowell were called up, which perhaps maybe suggests that Hall and Lyubushkin might not play tomorrow. I mean, we could be a little premature on that one, but I mean, sometimes 1+1 = 2. This may not be that type of situation, but it could be a little telling as to where Hall and Lyubushkin might be at. And it may not even be like a long-term thing. It could very well just be the
Mhm.
fact that the Maple Leafs at this point in the year, although yes, they're playing for positioning in the playoffs. They are going to make the playoffs. And if there's any type of precautions that they can take right now, I think that they're willing to take like all precautions and wait till someone's 130% ready to go. And Hall and Lyubushkin maybe only like 80% ready. And they say, you know what? Let's just give him a game. Let's give him a game and really make sure that they're okay. I mean, Justin Hall took a puck to the back of the head. You
That's
know,
like, yeah, that was, and he was bleeding too. Like that's a
yeah,
tough one.
yeah. So like that one may even be that could be, that one seems like it could be a little, could be longer term. I don't know. Again, we'll wait to find out tomorrow. And then Lyubushkin, we just spent the last 5-10 minutes talking about Taylor Hall's sucker punch to him and how he kind of dropped like a sack of potatoes on it. And who knows exactly what happened during that punch. Like I said, didn't look like there was, much force behind it, but you hit someone in the right spot. That could definitely be detrimental. And with Philip Kral and Matt Caldwell, two defensemen, getting called up, maybe there's a reason for it. And they were regarded as emergency call-ups as well. Not regular call-ups, but emergency call-ups. So could that potentially be another maybe hint towards what's going on with those guys? I don't know. Like I said, we'll find out tomorrow. I don't want to speculate too much, but this is just the news and notes about what's going on in Leafland. So we're just telling you what we know so far, keeping you up to date, as that is one of the things that we strive to do here on Locked On Leafs. One other guy was called up along with Philip Kral and Matt Holloway. I'll tell you who it is in just a moment. And it is not a good sign. I'll say that. But before I do, let me tell you about one of today's show sponsors, and that's betonline.net. After months of playing, college basketball has determined the top teams for the Final Four and will determine this year's national champion this coming weekend. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information, from all the latest odds, contests, and player pops, you name it. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your latest sport developments, including podcasts, reviews for all of the leagues this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information needs, including live betting, your favorite Vegas casino games, and even hockey. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with me as well. We are your hosts of Locked On Leafs, a daily Maple Leafs podcast, which you can find wherever you get your podcast from. Also, you can find us on YouTube as well. Make sure to subscribe to be involved in our 500 sub giveaway, which last I checked, Dave, I think we're up to now 366 ish at the time of recording, so we're not too far off.
I think I saw 367.
Boom, there it is, 67. Not the best number for Maple Leafs fans to think about, but
Leafs fans, we can't have 67 right now.
No, get us to 68. Let's go. We got as quick as possible. We got to get to 68. 67 is a terrible number. We all know that. All right. Before we took a quick break there, I teased that there was one more call-up that was made today, along with Philip Kral and Matt Caldwell, and that was one Michael Hutchinson. Michael Hutchinson recalled by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, Petr Mrazek went out in the game against Boston, along with those other defensemen, and he was the first one gone, tweaked his groin, and post-game, Sheldon Keefe said, basically made it seem like he's not going to be back for quite some time here, in which case it's going to be the Campbell and Shalgren show. But if they're calling up Michael Hutchinson for tomorrow, does that maybe suggest that Jack Campbell might not be quite ready yet to get the start here tonight against the Jets?
I think they're trying to err on the side of caution.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, they want to make sure that Jack Campbell is like 110% ready to come back, and not like he's only had one full practice. I think they want to see him get another. There's really, if you have Erik Källgren, let him go against the Jets. Save Campbell. They got that game Saturday against the Flyers. There's no real rush right now. And I saw the last time Michael Hutchinson played a game for the Leafs. I dread it. The possibility of him coming back. It was not a good game for him.
No.
But Erik Källgren showed that he could come in against the Bruins. So I think, you know what? Just make sure that Jack Campbell is really ready. So I don't see the reason why they can't just say, all right, we'll put Shalgren in against the Jets. Hutchinson will back him up. Campbell doesn't have to worry about getting, being on the bench. And then we can reassess for Saturday against the Flyers.
Do you think Kyle Dubas, based on what's now happening with Petr Mrazek, is regretting not getting another goaltender here at the trade deadline?
Other than the Harry Shateri stuff,
Right. Who's
I,
still yet to play a game. Still yet to play a game. They claimed him off waivers, and they're just going to let him sit there. Just let him sit there. Like, yeah.
if I at that rate, I would just be like, yeah, I'm not going to report. I'm just going to retire. Like,
I don't even, did he report? I don't even know if he reported or not, to be honest with you. I
that's
have
another thing we don't really.
Once he got claimed, I just kind of lost interest in the player and in the story, to be honest with you. But I know that he hasn't suited up yet for the team. But like, I asked that because we're one re-aggravated injury away from Jack Campbell to a Shalgren Hutchinson or a Shalgren and Joseph Wall, if he can get healthy, a tandem going down here into the final stretch and into the playoffs. That's kind of scary.
I think, you know what, like, look past the Marc-Andre Fleury stuff because it was clear he had all the he could lay it down all the scenarios and he had the decision of what he wanted to do.
He had all the leverage.
Yeah, he had all the leverage there. You know what? I saw the Dallas Stars pay, I think, a 4th-round pick to bring in Scott Wedgwood.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the type of deal I would have liked to see the Leafs make, where you just have an insurance. Scott Wedgwood is capable of playing in the NHL, even though, like, you look at his stats, he's playing for the Arizona Coyotes. You have to kind of look past that a little bit. But just to have that insurance that this isn't that, oh, we don't trust Eric Shalgren. No, it's just that if you lose Eric Shalgren plus Mrazek's injury history, you're screwed.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you're screwed, right? And Jack Campbell's health is not a certainty as well. At least there you got a little bit of insurance. And I think that was probably the one I was a little annoyed about, was that he didn't like, you can't bank on a guy that that all of your guys are getting picked up on waivers. You can't rely on that either. So that's where I think maybe they can get Carter Hutton to come and play in the NHL.
I was gonna say, like, Carter Hutton, I guess, is still an option. He is a member of the Maple Leafs organization, technically. He's been playing with Tucson, and I think he's been hurt though. Like, I don't even think he's healthy and playing. So I don't even know if that's a legitimate option, but he is part of the organization. And if he gets healthy, I suppose he could be. But at this point, I'm just hoping and praying that, like, one of these teams sends a goalie on waivers. like I think the Leafs just need another goaltending option to bring in here. The name that I was kind of always banging the table for, especially late, I guess, like, after it, I'm like, well, why not even throw a 3rd or 4th round pick at a guy like Craig Anderson? Like, why not even do something like that? And
Even, like,
obviously we know it didn't happen, but it's gonna be a dicey situation, man. Like, Shalgren legitimately, like, could become this team's starting goaltender if one bad move, one tweak from Jack Campbell. It's the Eric Shalgren show, who's got 5 games, not even 5 starts, just 5 games of NHL experience under his belt.
Yeah, this is just going to be such a weird thing where, like, the goaltending has just been such a talking point, and it's been so tough.
Dude,
and it's not even like
it was supposed to be a strength, was it not?
it's supposed to be the
Like,
one area that we didn't have to, like, no one had to really worry about. As long as they both provided solid average goaltending, that's all the Leafs needed, and it's just turned into a nightmare.
yeah, like, your hope that Jack Campbell can continue what he did last year, and he did that for the first 2 months of this season. And then you signed Petr Mrazek to a $3.8 million contract for 3 years, just hoping, okay, he's been a solid tandem goaltender in Carolina the last couple of seasons. He just needs to come in and do exactly what he's done, just be Petr Mrazek. Neither of those two things have panned out, and injuries have really brought Mrazek's season down the tubes, realistically. And then Jack Campbell, just kind of, things went off the rails for him, and now he also dealing with a rib injury himself. So yeah, goaltending now a massive question mark as we head into the final stretch and into the playoffs. And dude, the league could be called goalie. That's what Jamie Noodles McLennan always says. Because if you get yourself a hot goaltender, you can win games, win a series, and clearly the Maple Leafs right now don't give you any type of so where I'm looking for like comfort level, I guess,
No.
that they can go out and win you games. All right, why don't we take another quick break here and then we get back. Let's preview tonight's game. Leafs Jets in Toronto, Scotiabank Arena. Matthews going for 50. Going for 50. Does he do it, Dave? Don't tell me now. Tell me on the other side. We'll be right back for our audio fans. You'll be listening to a quick note from a couple of our show sponsors. For video, we'll be back in just a moment here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Welcome back into Locked On Leafs, daily Maple Leafs podcast by the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Mike DiStefano. I've got Dave Morassutti with me. We're your host of this daily Maple Leafs podcast. Tonight, Maple Leafs back in action. They've rattled off 2 big statement wins against Florida, and then the other night against Boston. Tonight, they've got the Winnipeg Jets also vying for a playoff spot, and Leafs and Winnipeg always seems to be a pretty good matchup. These are 2 teams who, last year they got into it quite a bit in the Canadian division. They were the 2 top dogs, and this will be another good outing that I'm expecting to see tonight. What are you expecting out of this matchup?
I mean, Winnipeg's desperate right now. They're trying to get into that playoff picture right now, and they're struggling. They beat the Sabres in a shootout. So like they've had a real tough time staying consistent. I edit a lot of columns from Ken Weeb, who writes for the Jets, and really, like, from everything I've read from Ken, it's really been consistency that's been the Jets' problem. They've struggled to win more than 3 games on numerous occasions this season, and like that's really tough when your team trying to make the playoffs, not being able to put together runs. Um, Connor Hellebuyck has not been the same goaltender this season for them. He's been good, but not what they need. I mean, talking about goaltending, like Eric Comrie has done pretty well in times where they've needed him to step up. I would assume Eric Comrie gets into the net for this one.
Yeah, I would as well.
And their offense is also just not firing the way it used to be. Like it should be. Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler have really struggled. Actually, I think they got separated this season, and Kyle Connor and Nick Ehlers have actually been, I think, the better players for the Jets this year. So if we're looking at players to watch, Nick Ehlers and Kyle Connor.
Nope,
Kyle
hold
Connor
on.
has
Yes.
COVID.
Yes. So
So
Kyle Connor will not be in the game tomorrow night because Kyle Connor has tested positive for COVID, along with Nate Schmidt.
right, Nate,
Boy,
I remember there was another one.
we haven't had to talk about that in quite some time. But that
Worst
90-day
possible
holiday
time.
period, yeah, that 90-day holiday period is starting to come to an end for a lot of these players that contracted the virus in December and in January when we saw the shutdown really occur. That they're gonna have to start testing again. And once they start testing again, I'll be
Ooh,
curious to see what happens. But I don't think it'll be the last. I think the Brad Larson, the Blue Jackets coach, tested positive a couple of days ago as well. So this storyline is starting to creep back up, and unless the NHL decides to stop testing, which with cross-border travel, I don't think they have that luxury that some of the other leagues do have that the NFL had. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, and if that's the case, things could get interesting down the stretch with some players who could potentially pop up as a positive COVID test. The good thing is it's only a 5-day quarantine as opposed to the 10-day that it was, last year. And back when, this was first going down too in December or so until the CDC kind of changed the rules up. But that's a big one. Not going to have Kyle Connor, who's a 40 goal scorer. He's been an absolute unit for the Winnipeg Jets this season. So he's not going to be a factor tomorrow night. They're big dogs. So that kind of bodes well for Toronto, I suppose. Nate Schmidt as well, a top 4 defenseman for the Jets. And you mentioned it, Eric Comrie most likely going to get the start because Connor Hellebuyck got the start tonight in Buffalo. So they're going to be on night 2 of a back-to-back. So Toronto has the opportunity to take advantage of a tired team on night 2. I think they got to do it. Like they're riding high, coming off of a couple of pretty good statement wins. Get off to a good start. Get off to a good start, take advantage of a tired team, and try and get a lead and then build a lead, and just keep it rolling, man. Keep having some good games, game after game after game. I know injuries right now kind of starting to pile up, especially on the blue line, but I think that the Leafs can take advantage in a win tomorrow. That'd be their 3rd in a row against a playoff caliber team. I think that would definitely give them some confidence here.
No, I think so. And like if Eric Shalgren is the one that ends up being the one that gets into this game, this is another game where he can kind of ease a bit of the concern from a lot of us about the goaltending situation. And look, Austin Matthews, Leon Draisaitl got his 49th against the Kings as we're recording this. He might put up a couple more. So you got to keep going, bud. You got to keep that scoring race going.
Does he hit 50 tonight? Does he hit 50?
You're kind of blowing my cosign no sign. I'm just gonna
Come on.
that was an easy. I know.
You knew that conversation had to happen. That's going to be the story of the night. Will Austin hit 50? And it's not just the fact that he's hitting 50 like tonight, and it'll be the first time, and I believe he'll become just the 4th Maple Leaf in history to hit that number. It's what Gary Leeman, Dave Andreychuk, and Rick Vive are the only 3 guys to have ever do it, correct? I believe those are the 3 players. Vive obviously has the record of 54 goals, which is the next milestone that he'll want to hit. But to be able to do it with fans in the stands, I was talking to Joe Bowen about this earlier today, and he's like, if he would have done it last year where there was no fans, it wouldn't have been as special. But to do it after a couple of years where you weren't able to have people in the building for big milestones, like the pop that place will get if he scores. Imagine he gets the ball rolling like 3 minutes into the game. He ends up a one-timer from the top of the circle that beats Eric Comrie. Like the pop that place is going to get. Like it's going to be like Edge at the Royal Rumble-esque pop from a couple of years back, no?
I would assume a very, very similar feeling from Leafs fans. I think this is a player that's been so close on so many occasions in terms of his pace. I think many Leafs fans will be very, very happy to see it finally happen because we keep hearing this guy's a 50 goal scorer. He's a 50 goal scorer. Now we can say he truly is a 50 goal scorer.
Yeah, he's yet to do it. He's been on pace literally each of the last 3 years, but has yet to do it. Well, I guess 2 years. This will be the 3rd year upcoming, but he's yet to actually do it. Could he do it tonight against the Jets? I guess we'll have to wait and find out, but I really hope he does. Really quickly, we liked how we saw it at the 4th line the other night from out of the Boston Bruins or against the Boston Bruins. Whether it was Colin Blackwell in the middle with Kyle Clifford and Jason Spezza on the wings. Do you anticipate going back to that just based on how well they played, or do you think perhaps we could see Nick Abruzzese make his debut in this game tonight? Maybe.
Interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if this is finally the time they give Nick Abruzzese his first game with the Leafs. But
At home, it's also be easier, right? Like I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I do think it makes a lot of sense to do it in this game. It'll be in front of the Leafs fans. It'll be a kind of a nice start, a nice thing for him to get that moment. I think this is a game where you can maybe spell Kyle Clifford or Jason Spezza, one of them two, to get them a game off. More so, I think Jason Spezza, buddy of mine, feels like he could use some time off as well. So I think it would be an ideal thing. I think Jason Spezza wouldn't mind to step aside and let Nick Abruzzese get his first crack at NHL action. So I could totally see that happen. That would probably be the only change I would expect if you're going to talk about. I mean, in terms of the forward lineup.
Right. I mean, defensively, until we find out what's going on with Justin Hall and Ilya Lyubushkin or Kral or Hollowell, actually won't really know what the blue line's going to look like. That'll be something to watch for during morning skate tomorrow. The other thing that I was going to add on to the Nick Abruzzese thing having it be at home, you also get last change. So, he won't get exposed. If you would have played him in Boston, he could have been exposed when they put him out there. And then next thing you know, you see Marchand and Bergeron come over the boards. You see Holland Pasternak come over the boards, and you could expose him at home. You can kind of shelter him a little bit more on that fourth line role and pick your matchups when you want him to play. So I think a home start might be a little bit more enticing for the Maple Leafs, and perhaps we could see it happen. Tonight against the Winnipeg Jets. All right, we'll take. Let's just get into it. Let's get into the cosign, no sign. Actually, let's get right into it, buddy. For those who are new to the podcast, this is a game that we play each and every week. And the way it goes is we're going to make a statement to each other. If we agree with the statement, we're going to co-sign it. If we disagree, we're going to no sign it. Dave, why don't you go first? Sorry if I spoiled one on you there earlier, pal.
Okay, I got a couple in my back pocket. One is a non-Leafs related one. The Vegas Golden Knights fail to make the playoffs this season.
Okay, so that requires me opening up the standings really
I got it
quick.
right here. I'm going to pull it up for you so you can even see it on the screen.
Okay, look at you. This is the beauty of YouTube, buds. You gotta scroll right in for that. I can't see anything, buddy. Why would you use Sportsnet? Who are you? Come on now. Just kidding.
I'm going with the brand. There you go.
Not my brand, pal. Not my brand. Okay, so we're sitting here, Vegas Golden Knights. They've got 14 games remaining. They're 1 point back of the Dallas Stars. Currently on the outside looking in.
And the game's in hand. That's the part I
Will
think.
they miss? Are you saying that they'll miss the playoffs or make the
Yep.
playoffs?
I think they'll miss.
I think I'm gonna co-sign this, dude. I think I'm gonna co-sign this. Like, you're right. It's the games in hand that really make it seem. How many points does Edmonton have right now?
Edmonton has 79, and they're winning right now against LA. That game really will determine a lot, I think, for Vegas as well.
Yeah, so if Edmonton ends up taking the 2 points, they're at 81. Scroll back down there to Vegas. There, 81. Vegas would be 5 points back, same amount of games played. But then they got to jump one of Dallas or St. Louis to get it done. Dallas and St. Louis with 3 games in hand. I'm gonna co-sign that, man. I think they can miss out on the playoffs, and boy, would that ever suck for Vegas. Actually, no, that'd be awesome because screw Vegas. They've had so much success already. I mean, having 1 year spent outside of the playoffs, that'll be okay. Trust me.
Be a shock to the system a little bit in Vegas.
Yeah, well, you know what? When you go all the way to the Cup final in year one, you're not going to get my sympathy. Not going to get my sympathy. Although I appreciate what they've been able to do to build like a real solid team. But yeah, for whatever reason, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a similar situation to Toronto, right? Where goaltending has been kind of an issue and injury to their goaltender, Robin Leonard, of late. I mean, they've been relying on Dylan Thompson, a rookie. That's just has not really been doing anything for them. So that's been a big issue as well. All right. I'll give you my first one here. Petr Mrazek has played his last game in a Toronto Maple Leafs uniform.
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm gonna co-sign it because I think they were hoping that his injury issues were behind him. I think having a guy make that much money and have these injury concerns, especially a groin injury, he's not a young player anymore, and the performance hasn't been there. I just think they can't have that on their salary cap moving forward. So I'm going to co-sign that he has played his last game with the Leafs.
What do you think it'd take to move this? I mean, that's quite an albatross of a contract at this point. 2 more years at $3.8 million. You got to think it'll take a hefty picker prospect to get someone to bite on that now.
I think potentially, but I also do think that there are teams that will take a goaltender because they either need a goaltender or they just like you don't think Arizona would consider it? Arizona will take any player as long as it gets into the cap floor.
No, they'll take any player that is making less in actual dollars than their cap hit is. That's what Arizona will take.
I do think Petr Mrazek made quite a bit of money this season out of his contract. I should have pulled that up. That would be an interesting conversation there because some people were wondering if the Leafs could buy him out. like actually no, he's got quite a bit left. So I don't know. That's an interesting point. Um, maybe the Leafs. I don't think the Leafs will want to retain any salary.
No.
But I think you can throw, or like Arizona has like no one. So that's where I kind of think they would be an ideal team, or even maybe like Seattle would consider it if they try to move off of something else.
Oof. They already have two goalies with some pretty bad contracts, it looks like. I don't know. It's going to be. They can get rid of Petr Mrazek, but it's going to cost them a pretty penny. I don't know if it'll be Marlowe type of value to move him out there. I don't know if it'll cost a first round pick, but I think it'll be costly. There could be a decent prospect that'll have to go the other way. All right. Second one for you. Go ahead.
Second one for me, it's going to be actually about our good friend Matthew Knies. I
Mm,
heard your conversation with Scott Wheeler
mm.
about Mr. Knies. I think he sticks around for one more season in college.
Ooh, I'm gonna no sign it, man. I'm gonna no sign it. I think he comes out. Because you may have heard my conversation with Scott Wheeler,
Mhm.
who did say that there perhaps could be some more development in his game, and that maybe an extra season in Minnesota would help him reach his full potential, and that very well could be true. But I also had a conversation a few days earlier with one Craig J. Button, who's a very well respected scout and former general manager of the NHL. He believes that there could be a top six position for Matthew Knies and could fit very nicely next to John Tavares and William Nylander. And if that is the case, if that's the carrot that's dangling in front of Matthew Knies, I think that probably could get him to Toronto and forego the rest of his collegiate career. So I'm going to no sign it. I think he comes over. What would be next weekend is the Frozen Four. Once that wraps up, I think he signs with the Maple Leafs and probably gets in some games here. Yep, I'm going to no sign it.
I think the other reason too is he's got the physical ability, and if he's not ready to play against NHLers, you can play it with the Marlies. I think that would even work well for his development as well. So
Yep.
I'm on the fence with it. I think they'll the Leafs know what's the better path for his development, whether it's the Marlies or in college. I think either one will work for Mr. Nice.
All right, last one for you here, Dave, and this one's a little off the board. You support superstars dropping the mitts.
Oh, and I guess this is about Nathan McKinnon. I'm going to no sign it for that very reason because fighting is very unpredictable. I've seen accidents happen where players slip, hit their head on the ice. The broken hand one, that's a bit of a fluke, but I think other guys can step up in those situations. I don't mind teammates sticking up for each other, but there's value in making sure your superstar players are on the ice. And as valuable as I appreciate Nathan McKinnon stepping up for his teammate, but his team also now is without him for an undetermined amount of time because he fought. So I'm going to
Yeah,
no sign.
it's admirable
That
for
was
him
the
to
word I was
do
looking
that.
for.
Right. He takes out Mikko Rantanen with a pretty brutal body check, Matt Dumba that is, and his teammate takes exception to it, and drops the mitts, and there's a pretty good tilt between the two guys, but ultimately, it seems as though that may have been where the injury occurred. We don't know that for sure, but that seems to be what Jared Bednar intimated when he spoke yesterday after practice, or before. It was before the game, actually. That was a good game also. They ended up beating Calgary in kind of the battle of the two West Titans out there. But at the same time, you know, if you can kick it with the big boys, maybe go for it. Go ahead. There's I would love to see nothing more, to be honest. Not often. Don't get me wrong, but when John Tavares was taking those cross checks to the back from Brad Marchand last night, wouldn't you have just loved it if he just dropped the mitts and just filled in Marchand's face?
It
Would
would have
that
been very satisfying, but I
I'm not
also
saying go right. I'm not saying go after like Zdeno Chara or any of these mutants like Ryan Reeves or anything like that. But if you're if it's like Nate McKinnon versus Austin Matthews, I guess like two pretty evenly sized guys, yeah, I mean I would think that sticking up for your teammates, what that would do for your teammates, it's unfortunate that sometimes it can cause an injury such as this, but it's pretty entertaining and pretty exhilarating to see a guy like that drop the mitts. I mean, when Sidney Crosby fights, I think he's only had like 2 fights in his career,
Yeah, very rare.
but like I remember them. You
I
know what I mean?
remember one of them specifically where he just went like he just started wailing on a guy
Like,
on the
but
ground.
but it's like it's just memorable, and when that happens. So I feel like I support it. If I support it to an extent, I guess. If you can handle yourself against against the player,
Yeah.
sure. Don't be reckless though, and just go after these mutants. Like Mitch Marner, don't go drop the mitts with Milan Lucic. Probably not a good idea. But if he wants to go and fight, I don't know. Think of someone who's just like a small little, like Nick Suzuki, maybe. Okay, maybe.
Yeah,
Like
because
that'd be a
another
pretty
guy is
fun film to
really
watch,
yeah.
right? I don't know. I kind of just want to be a contrarian on that one. But all right, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasts and platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti and follow the show at Locked On Leafs. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube as well. We're close to 500. We're within 130 or so now.
140 or so, yeah.
Yeah, to 500 subs, and we'll be giving away this Austin Matthews, Tim Hortons NHL Superstar collectible sticker, still sealed. Could potentially be an autograph on the stick, which would be super duper cool if that were the case. But you do need to be a subscriber to be involved in that giveaway. We'll be doing that once we hit 500. And you can find us Locked On Leafs on YouTube. All right, we'll be back with another episode tomorrow. We will go over tonight's game against the Winnipeg Jets. Enjoy it. Let's pray and hope for 50 for Matthews. It'd be awesome to do it on home ice and not have to do it in Philly because that would suck. I want it to happen in Toronto. So let's all kind of pray for that, in the coming hours to the game. But until then, give a lot right here on Locked On Leafs.